It is August 25th, 26th, somewhere around there. It's the PFF Forecast. We have got a great conversation coming up. It's going to be Ian Hartitz, Eric Eager, as usual, and then Evan Silva, remote from Chicago. Let's rock. All right, that interview is long and good, so I don't think there's really any need.
It's also my nickname's Long and Good, you know.
Jesus Christ. Oh, my God. I don't even know. Fuck. We'll get to the interview. The interview is really fun. We talk about a bunch of stuff. We talk about, obviously, some fantasy football stuff, but I thought the conversation overall, just about football and teams that we think a little more highly of than the market is really solid. Plus Leonard Fournette and Josh Allen. It's good stuff. All right, here we go. We'll get to the interview now. All right, we've been trying to do this for a while. Evan has been on this podcast spitting hot fire a couple of times. Evan Silva from EstablishTheRun.com, in case you didn't know. And Ian Hartitz, who we dragged live to Cincinnati, now a resident of Columbus.
It's good to be here in Cincy, Vegas. Happy to be back in the homeland, Ohio. What's up, dudes?
Now, we did not make you eat Skyline chili last night. But tonight is still open. So the potential for you to get involved in Cincy's finest is still there. Evan, I've never heard your take on Skyline chili.
That's because I don't think I've ever had it.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, I've never been to Cincinnati before. I've
Really?
never spent an extended period of time in the state of Ohio at all.
Huh. I think we gotta make this happen.
I mean, why would we give them that trash food in a state that might as well be in Kentucky, and a city that might as well be in Kentucky as it is?
I think, Eric, that based on the one time we did eat with Evan, that he would have fit in really well at our dinner last night.
I think so. I mean, there was a combination of loud. There was a combination of gregarious. It was a fun time, and I think Evan would have had a good time.
Yeah, you didn't mention the wine or the steak.
No.
But yeah, that works too.
Yeah,
That works too.
the only thing missing was Sean Payton.
True. That's true. All right, let's start with this. Eric, you decided to publish a My Guys article, and I want to just get this out of the way. Because we're here with two people that actually know what they're doing, do this for a living. And you do not, kind of, sort of.
Please, God, tell me that Leonard Fournette is on this fucking list.
It is. Yep.
Let's just start there. Please, Eric, explain.
I like Leonard Fournette over Gordon and Gurley this year.
Some reasoning?
My
I
reasoning,
mean, that's not particularly bold, but okay.
well, the ADP was higher or lower or whatever. I mean, it made sense from an ADP perspective to say that, you know, he was underrated relative to those two.
Okay, but can you, all I've heard from Ian in particular, GIF form, written form, all forms, honestly, art forms, that is that Leonard Fournette is garbage.
Yeah, I'm not disputing the fact that he's garbage. Here's my take on him, though. The Jacksonville Jaguars are actually going to try in the first few games this year. They look like a tank candidate for sure. But if you look at their early season schedule, it isn't the most difficult thing in the world, one. They have a head coach who, yes, is probably going to get fired at some point, but he's going to be coaching for his life early on. And Fournette gets volume in that offense. And a season ago, he had 3 touchdowns, which obviously was not like corresponding to the sort of production he had. As inefficient as it was, there was a ton of volume there. There was a lot of yards. He had over 70 catches. And he has, I think, a better chance to be the bell cow back in that offense than Melvin Gordon and Todd Gurley do in their respective offenses, let's say, into week 6.
Man, that's the guy you want to target.
Ian,
that's the guy you want to leave fantasy.
Destroy him.
Okay.
Destroy him, Ian.
I know 2020 has been a long time, everyone, but let's go through what's happened to Leonard Fournette over these past 8 or so months. The Jaguars first tried to trade him, could not find a suitor. Evan, I think you said maybe like a conditional 6th or 7th round pick might have gotten the job done. And no, he's still a member of the Jacksonville Jaguars. They declined his 5th-year option. They signed.
He's going to be hungry.
They brought
more hungry than normal.
Brought on Jay Gruden to call plays, new offensive coordinator. Oh, and they also just happened to bring on Chris Thompson, who he'll get hurt. He plays 10 plus games a year.
Who's the offensive coordinator, though?
He'll get hurt. Mr. Jay Gruden. Now,
Now, did Jay Gruden not give a ton of carries to the corpse that is Adrian Peterson the last 2 years?
Let's look at the running backs that have more targets than Chris Thompson before Jay Gruden got fired last year. And those were Christian McCaffrey and Austin Eckler. That's literally it. So we can take Fournette's triple-digit target projection, throw that out the window. And yeah, okay, are they going to tank or not? No players tank. It's too physical of a game to tank, obviously. But this team has the single lowest win total in football, with a front office that just cannot help but piss off all their good players. I just don't know. Like, you want to spend a third-round pick in fantasy on this guy with this many red flags? I don't want Gordon. I don't want Gurley either. I want to get dope running backs in the first 2 rounds and then not take Leonard Fournette over Adam Thielen or Allen Robinson or one of these guys. It's one of those things where I don't necessarily disagree with you for putting Fournette ahead of Gurley, ahead of Gordon, but what are we doing taking him that high?
It's more of a like, if you read it, most of what I wrote here was that I don't think Gordon or Gurley, like, if you're playing the 0 running back strategy and you end
What's
up
that,
here.
by the way?
What's that?
What's that?
It's a variance enhancing, approach to fantasy football.
It sounds like Advocare or steroids or something like that.
It's the Amway of fantasy football. But to me, I think you'd rather have, because like Gurley's going to be, we're going to hear the words bone on bone with Todd Gurley by week 3. They're already trying to like pump him up and say he's going to get 50. If they give him 20 carries week 1, and they are the Falcons, so they will do this, he is going to be out by like the fourth week, right? Like, he just can't, I don't think he can withstand this thing. And like, Melvin Gordon is not as good as Philip Lindsay. Like, it's just not the case. And that Denver team is probably going to be in contention, and they're going to run with the hot hand, which is going to be Philip Lindsay, who's better than Melvin Gordon.
Stop. Okay, let me ask you
He's
this.
The Broncos are probably going to be in contention for what?
Dude, the Broncos, look, next year, Evan, you are going to be having the same conversation about Josh Allen that about Drew Lock. The Broncos are going to be a 9-7, 10-6 team, and we're all going to be like, "Oh, what the hell is going on here?" And it's going to be despite their bad, inaccurate quarterback. And next season, he's going to be open at He's going to open at 100-1 to be the MVP. And we're all going to be like, look, if Denver gets, competes with Kansas City and somehow squeaks out the AFC West, Drew Lock is an MVP candidate. That's all going to be next year.
Oh, Eric, you're losing it, bro. And,
Can we bring it back to Leonard Fournette? Because, Evan, I need your take.
We're bringing it back. So this is what the Jaguars are doing. They're doing almost the same thing that the Dolphins did last year. And if you remember what the Dolphins did is yes, but also they essentially held like a tryout year. They rostered more players in the NFL by far on their 53 over the course of the season than any other team. They spread out the distribution of their running back touches. They had Kenyon Drake, and they made sure that he didn't get hurt before the trade deadline, so they were able to get something back for him. This is what the Jaguars are going to do. They're going to give touches to Raquel Armstead. They're going to give touches to Divine Ozigbo. They're going to give passing down touches to Chris Thompson. They're going to play from behind constantly. And anyone that has played DFS understands the value of game scripts. And the Jaguars are going to be dogs in virtually every game that they play this season. I can't even remember the last time that I saw a team with a 4.5 game win total. Usually it's like the worst win total in the NFL in terms of sportsbook projections is like 5.5. Last year, the Dolphins were at 5. I can't even tell you the last time I saw a team with a 4.5 game win total, and the sharp bet is to the under.
It's juiced. It's juiced that way.
Yeah, but they were, the Dolphins were 4.5 last year, at least where we got them. But the issue is I agree with you, Evan, there's a lot of similarities between the Dolphins and the Jaguars, 100%. But there are a ton of differences too. Chief among them, the fact that the Dolphins a season ago, like, were starting over at the head coach, all the coordinators, they were starting over. There is some similarity. I do think of Fitzpatrick as being an older version of Gardner Minshew, so you do have that. But you look at their early schedule. Colts, they're at home against the Colts. Like, I do think the Colts will be okay, but that's not a slam dunk. At Titans, home to the Dolphins, at Bengals, at Houston, and then home to Detroit. And like that they're not going to be favored in a great deal of those games, but it's not like they're plus 14 in all those games. Like that's kind of
I will say that the schedule is the singular data point that is working in favor of Leonard Fournette. That's the singular data point. Unfortunately, there are like 14 data points that we should be looking at when we're talking about a projection for a player like Leonard Fournette, and he's got red marks on the other 13, and he's got the green mark.
Okay, so in relation to Melvin Gordon and Todd Gurley, like how much more red does he have than those two guys?
They're not.
This is the tier that you avoid. As Ian is.
So you're saying just
no. This is the tier that you avoid completely anyway.
This is what I wanted to ask, which is, as someone that is not focused enough until my fantasy draft, and I'm in auction leagues, so whatever. But the same kind of theory applies, which is like, okay, I'm trying to cram and prepare so that I don't totally fuck up and embarrass myself like I did in a best ball league with these guys a couple weeks ago. How do I make sure I avoid having to be in a situation where you're at, which is like Leonard Fournette, Melvin Gordon, or Todd Gurley?
I agree that when I'm doing best ball drafts, I'm generally avoiding. I mean, Fournette falls beneath a lot of these ADPs, and that you get him a lot late, like 15, 20 picks later on. I think he's a value. I just think among that group, if you end up having to pick among that group, I think he's a better option than those two. That's mostly what I'm implying.
My point is, picking among that group, you've already lost.
Well, so here's
is that really true though? I mean, if you approach the draft in such a way that you get, like, if Fournette, if those three running backs for the same reason fall to an ADP of like 50 or 60, like is that a bad option to take Fournette over those two guys?
That's fine. We never hate players. We hate ADPs, and I hate Leonard Fournette's current ADP.
Yeah.
If we drop it by 25, yeah, of course we're talking, but that's not the reality right now. I mean, as I'm looking at your article and these ADPs, all these guys are going pick 36 or sooner, and that is your top 3 rounds in majority of 12-man leagues. I just got done potting with the Ringers Danny Kelly, super sharp guy. We're going over our 10 commandments for upcoming 2020 fantasy drafts, and Danny's first one I thought was brilliant. You go safe picks in the early rounds so you don't screw your draft with the first top 3-4 round picks. We're all picking from ballers. Don't get risky. Go upside later. There's just no point to risk a third, even a fourth round pick on a guy that it wouldn't be shocking if he's not even on the team in a month.
So does that make zero running back in a standard 12-team league in the current NFL? I mean, does that just mean you're going either completely zero running back in the sense of you're not taking guys until later, rounds 5, 6, or you're taking guys, you're not going zero running back at all? I mean, is that the approach you have to take given the current landscape of the running back position?
I think the zero RB strategy is fine in big GPP style tournaments with 1,000 people and you're trying to be contrarian, you're trying to find a different way out. But if you're at 10 or 12 of your buddies back home, I just don't think it's a good strategy in 2020. Bell cow backs are more important than ever. Robust RB, get them all, modified zero RB, this or that. Like, just don't pass on this stud 12, 15 running backs.
Let me take this then to that question, because I've also wrote in here that the reasons why I like the Elliott Kamara, I like Elliott Kamara in some cases over Saquon Barkley. I mean, is that like if you're picking amongst those three after the initial pick, which is McCaffrey? I mean, is there a case for Barkley other than they're going to be behind a lot and they're going to throw him the ball?
It's the target separator is what has been for Barkley and McCaffrey. I mean, especially in 2018 when Saquon, I think, had like 121 targets himself. I don't know if we'll get that with Jason Garrett there. I mean, it would not be the craziest thing Garrett's done to give Dion Lewis too many reps over Saquon Barkley. And Zeke, I think his target ceiling is going a little bit under the radar. We saw him in 2018 without Witten there. They really made him their underneath guy. But, at that point, you're happy with any of Zeke, Kamara, Saquon on your team. Like, don't take Michael Thomas and Devontae Adams there. As good as they are, I mean, you're just, again, like once you get to the third round, you're picking between running backs like 20 through 25, while wide receivers 6 through 12 are still on the board.
Yeah, I mean, you get Elliott and the Dallas Cowboys win total 9.5. Over is already like 160, 170. That's probably going to be a pretty good team. Also, McCarthy, I mean, he was a guy who made Eddie Lacy a 10 yards per catch guy, as late as 2014, 2015. Like we remarked about this when we talked about Dallas earlier. Like, they just didn't throw the ball to Zeke last year, and or in advantageous situations. I think McCarthy changes that a little bit, and changes the calculus. I've always, in any
So
time
you're
I've
not
got,
worried about Tony Pollard?
No. Okay. I mean, I know Chris got the two mixed up, but I won't get the two mixed up.
That was one of the chief wins for running backs irreplaceable when Chris was watching. He was doing film study, and he does the most in-depth film study of anyone out there prepping for the game. Goes through all the plays. He's commenting on them. And it was, I think you actually tweeted out recently the Tony Pollard play where he just is against Miami.
Was it the Eagles one where he went like
Maybe
one way
that's
and the
it.
other? Yeah.
He just totally takes the guy's life. And he's like, look at Zeke, man. He's just, and I'm like, that's Tony Pollard. It was a win. I want to bring up two more quickly because I think, Evan, you're a Carson Wentz fan. Am I correct there? We here are the Matthew Stafford fan club. And Eric
so am I.
Okay, so if you had to pick between those two guys in fantasy, and it looks like ADP separated by about 10, Eric's making the claim that you would take Stafford over Wentz and Matt Ryan. Your thoughts?
I have Carson Wentz as quarterback 9 and Matthew Stafford as quarterback 10. So,
Close.
and in that range, I mean, quarterbacks tend to be relatively interchangeable. I mean, if, one guy is going to outscore the other, it's probably going to be like 1.2 points per game at most. It's quarterbacks score, like if you look at weekly scoring among quarterbacks, I mean, it's so tightly bunched. It might be a 2-point difference between the quarterback 8 on the week and the quarterback 17 on the week. Carson Wentz has working in his favor that he's a little bit more mobile than Matthew Stafford. They both have injury concerns. I'm a believer in both of the offenses as groups. And then I would lean towards Stafford as having a little bit better supporting cast. So, again, I think it's a relative coin flip, and that's why I have them ranked right next to each other.
I always get worried about Philadelphia because 2017 was such an interesting case in that Wentz was brilliant on 3rd and long, and we got this high from them because they went for so many 4th downs. They went for 4th downs against the Bears when they were ahead. They went for 4th downs against New England when they were behind. They went for a ton of 4th downs, and we got this impression from the Eagles that they were sharp, like they were ahead of the curve, and I think in many ways they are. But if you look at like their early down play scripts, they run the ball a lot on early downs. And that was like what we got enticed into was Carson Wentz having to convert all these 3rd and longs, and he did. I worry that they have, they continue, like the last 2 years, they sort of see, okay, we got to protect Carson. Like, do they continue to lean into this approach where they put him in a lot of disadvantageous 3rd downs? And from a fantasy perspective, that becomes limiting because they don't have as many possessions as, other teams would, or as many like cheap throws that some of these other guys get. Like, that's the thing that worries me the most about Wentz. I think he's great. I just wonder sometimes, whereas last season it did look like Darrell Bevel just threw a lot of caution to the wind as far as play action, depth of target, and you look at the emergence, Wentz has Ertz, but Stafford has Hawkinson, who I think in year 2, could be a really big playmaker for them. So, it's just, I like all 3 of those quarterbacks, but I picked I picked Stafford out.
I got Wentz 8, Stafford 10, so I'm kind of right there with Evan where I think you bring a good point. To me, the difference between these Eagles teams, look at 2017, they had, Torrey Smith out there stretching the field and even a rookie year, Mac Hollins, who wasn't bad. And Wentz plays like an MVP candidate. 2018 comes along. Mike Wallace, IR by week 1. That was the Smith replacement. Hollins, IR as well. Wentz struggles. They're as great as Ertz and Goddard and all these guys are. It's tough when you have absolutely no one to stretch the field. 2019, one game with Deshaun Jackson, the dude goes absolutely off. And he gets hurt, and there was just never any speed. Wentz was the QB 10 last season in fantasy, despite throwing to Nelson Aguilar, Greg Ward, Joshua Perkins down the stretch. Now, what did the Eagles do? We got Jalen Reagor, John Hightower, Quez Watkins, healthy Djax. There's finally speed again. I mean, I thought even the Marquise Goodwin signing was really sharp until he opted out, so that didn't work. But I think finally those easy throws that you mentioned haven't been there, could be there because they got some speed on the field. We finally got a fast offense in Philadelphia.
Yeah, that's a really I like that. It does seem like they have an approach on offense, and it's just been felled by noise, which injuries to Jackson and Wallace and those players. So
Jalen Reagor was one of my low key favorite picks of the entire draft process. I just thought it was like you couldn't have matched a player that was valuable and needed, maybe better than what the Eagles got.
The interesting thing with Rager is it's a huge projection because a lot of his production was left on the field by other people at TCU. And so you have to sort of look at the counterfactual and say he would have been productive had they had a quarterback of the caliber of any of these other receivers, which is a little bit of a projection.
That's what you always say about your college career too.
Same, yeah. 13 catches. Yeah.
Turned out. All right, last one real quick. I have to talk about our guy, Terry McLaurin, of the Washington football team, who and you talk about him relative to Cooper Kupp. I feel like they're in different leagues as football players, just like take fantasy out of it, right? And I think people like Kupp because he had a couple productive years. He's a white slot guy. Everyone loves white slot guys. It's just like a fact. But if I'm just looking at these two guys as football players, to me, Terry McLaurin is a guy who can be going into next year like top 10. And I just don't see that for Cooper Kupp in any universe.
Yeah, and it's more crowded. McLaurin is the undisputed number one guy in Washington. I have McLaurin, wide receiver 16, Kupp all the way down at 25. Kupp, for some reason, is getting like this pass on having pretty much Devontae Parker's exact splits from last. I mean, Kupp was the wide receiver 2 before their bye, and he was the wide receiver 21 in weeks 10 through 17. I mean, inverse Devontae Parker, and we're dinging Parker for it, and we're not dinging Kupp for it. And I don't know why, because I'm with you. I'm not convinced Kupp is this alpha, elite wide receiver 1. I mean, I had Yahoo Sports, Matt Harmon, Reception Perception, one of the smarter guys in the industry with it. Kupp has never finished above the 12th percentile in success rate versus man or press coverage. I mean, if there's been anyone that's benefited from McVay just being a genius in manufacturing touches, I think it's Cooper Kupp. And, as great as the Rams offense was in 2017, 2018, they were still 12th in scoring last year. I mean, it just seems like a system to me that is not going to be as productive as they were in past years. And, I mean, definitely McLaurin over him. And I got Robert Woods over Kupp as well by a decent amount.
Yeah, Evan, you're a guy who I think is pretty sharp with respect to coaching. Washington is it's not necessarily a positive case because I'm not sure about Scott Turner. I'm not sure about, the offensive, but it is losing a negative case, isn't it? Because in Washington, we do play caller rankings and things like that. And Jay Gruden was one of the worst in football for the last 2 years. Just simply like getting back to average there.
That'll bode real well for Leonard Fournette.
Actually, it'll generate touches for him, much like it did for Adrian Peterson. But
a lot of 2-yard runs between the guards.
Look, I'm in a points per carry league, so that's perfect.
That makes
it's
sense.
not the yards, it's the attempts, guys. Please.
I'm in what's called the football guys fantasy football league, and they give me points for carries, and after 20 carries I get like 10 additional points.
You joke, there actually are leagues with it's actually bonkers things.
It's actually if you have a running back at over 20 attempts, it's a
you
big
win the
bonus.
league.
Yeah,
you win the league
bonus.
Automatically.
Rushing attempts equal passing touchdowns.
So, what do you think about Washington from that perspective, from like the changing of the guard from Jay Gruden to literally anybody else?
I'm optimistic about Scott Turner. I've heard really good things about him, actually. He is very interested in analytics. I think the Panthers did a really good job in 2018 of scheming their offense to create a more efficient passing offense with Cam Newton. And then, the wheels fell off late in the year. And I think that they did about as well as they could have with Kyle Allen last year. With Terry McLaurin, though, what I really focus on is less on the coaching and just more on the fact that there's so little target competition in Washington that we're talking about Steven Sims and Logan Thomas, and Terry McLaurin has a chance at like 150 targets. He played in college. I'm a big believer in quarterback, pass catcher, established rapport. And he played in college with Dwayne Haskins. And Terry McLaurin is just a straight-up baller. So at Establish the Run, we are way higher than ADP on Terry McLaurin, and we're going to keep it that way because we want our audience to have Terry McLaurin on their fantasy rosters. And, again, just going back to the target competition within the offense, and I don't I think that it's probably going to be like a bottom 8 offense, probably. But Terry McLaurin is a guy to absolutely bet on, I think, this year. I think he has a chance to compete to be a top 5, top 10 guy in terms of targets across the league.
We liked and it's still available at Caesars if you want to go get it. We like the Terry McLaurin over 999.5.
And another thing, Eric, that and I really like that you guys have been pushing this because it's factual, is that Dwayne Haskins was better as a rookie than people think. The odds were stacked against him, first of all. But the way that he sort of improved incrementally, and then over the final month, over his final 4 starts, he played at a pretty high level.
He was good. After the bye,
he has to limit the catchable inaccurate was one of the high things, but he was a lot better, and they did not give him a chance early.
Thank you. That's the point. He comes in at mid-game against the Giants.
It was a joke.
Mid-game at the Vikings. Oh, here's
they
your first
started
start.
Colt
Go to
McCoy
Buffalo.
over him the moment Colt McCoy was healthy. And it's like they would have started Alex Smith over him had Alex Smith miraculously come back too.
I legitimately, there are a few times where you feel bad for someone on TV, and I legitimately remember
Thursday night game against Minnesota, he just had no
I felt
chance.
terrible for him. But to Evan's point, after the bye, he was a top 10 graded quarterback. He and McLaurin, 120 passer rating, and he limited the big mistakes pretty well. I think your point is like the pinpoint accuracy was not there kind of overall.
But if you have a Brandon Lloyd-like player like Terry McLaurin, it's not that big of a deal.
So their win total is still 5.5.
5 is minus 120 if you go some places, which
Wow, you want to show me those places? I'm seeing it at 5.5, minus 115 both sides on BetOnline.
This is going to be a decent case study on defense, I think, in Washington to see how far can you get having absolute monsters across the defensive line and no one to cover.
Although in the secondary, yes, on the outside it's a disaster. But on the inside of the defense, Kendall Fuller's a pretty good player. Yeah. You had some injuries, but he was good the last time he was in Washington. He was decent in 1 year in Kansas City. And then Landon Collins is not a scrub. They'll be okay on the inside, but you're right. I mean, it's really going to be we need to get pressure on the quarterback. And, to me, if I look at them, if you can look at a prop for Washington having more wins than the Giants, I feel like that prop at even money or better is about as good as it gets because the Giants have a much tougher schedule. I think their quarterback is overrated compared to Haskins. And I think there's a pretty good chance that the coaching staff, even if Rivera is a little slowed by this cancer and hopefully he gets better, I like Washington in that division to finish third or better, much more than I like the Giants.
I would also say I think it's a disgrace that the Carolina Panthers and the Washington Redskins have the same win total.
You like the Panthers more?
No, I think the Panthers suck.
Oh, okay.
Bridgewater has long been a disagreement by me and George.
So, I think we should go around the horn and talk about teams that we like more than the market here because I can't believe the Panthers are 5.5. I think the Panthers.
So are you on BetOnline right now?
Yeah, I think the Panthers are gonna be the worst team in the NFL. Gardner Minshew to me is the type of quarterback that I want to back. I think he gets the Jaguars going a little bit. They had a bunch of first-round picks. Like some of those guys, those freak athletes are going to come in and they're going to ball out. Meanwhile, the Panthers drafted a run-stuffing defensive tackle in the first round. Teddy Bridgewater was pumped up by having an offensive wizard in Evan's friend Sean Payton and weapons galore and a wonderful home field and a defense that played out of its mind while he dinked and dunked his way to a 5-0 record. I mean, their defense is horrible, and their offense isn't going to be that good.
Here's the thing. I think Jacksonville has a wider range of outcomes. We have them with an 11% chance of having the first overall pick. We have Carolina second at 7.6. So there's a big gap there. But I do think because of the types of players that Jacksonville brought in, Laviska Shenault is a high ceiling, low floor guy.
Also going to steal carries from Leonard Fournette.
Stop. C.J. Henderson's a high ceiling.
Can't wait for those Wildcat touchdowns at the goal line from Laviska Shenault.
When you draft all defensive players, that immediately increases your floor but decreases your ceiling. When you have Teddy Bridgewater as quarterback, that increases your floor but substantially limits your ceiling. That I think the Panthers like are going to win 5 games.
Based on that construction of the house, I can't fit into the house that Teddy Bridgewater
Well, especially
builds.
after the stakes we had last night. I don't know if I'll be able to fit in.
Who are some teams, though? Let's talk about some teams that we like more than the market.
Looking at the win total right now, the Houston Texans at 7.5 pop out to me. I just don't. When Deshaun Watson is your quarterback, who I think is a with or without DeAndre Hopkins, he's a top 5 quarterback in real life and fantasy. Projecting them for under 8 wins, third in this division, in a division where I think, if we look at the AFC playoff teams and say who could take a step back, because there's, we're always going to have playoff teams not make the playoffs next year. Tennessee Titans kind of seem to be a popular one. Things are not going to go as well for them. We have the Jaguars, who I think we've talked about enough. And the Colts, man, I feel like one of the Colts or Buccaneers, like it's going to work out, but one of those teams is probably going to dud. And I mean, call me skeptical that Phillip Rivers is going to go. I know it's the best offensive line of his career, but man, we track those turnover-worthy plays every single year at PFF, and like he's one of like 5 or 6 quarterbacks in these last 3 years to rack up over 30 turnover-worthy plays. And they're coming out in training camp saying he's not throwing downfield, and that's great and all, but it's just Deshaun Watson is so much better than any other quarterback in this division, and to put them third and under 500, like I'm not going to sit here and stand for a Bill O'Brien or anything like that. And the defense, as always, is one injury away from J.J. Watt from being painfully mediocre again. But I'm not betting against Deshaun Watson.
Their playoff odds, which I sort of like the playoff odds more. We got it at plus 144 somewhere. It's plus 150 on BetOnline. 7-team playoff, I think, in the AFC. When
7 quarterbacks are going to the playoffs.
And I have a really
AFC,
hard
and
time
Deshaun
saying
Watson's not one of them.
Here's the only tricky thing for me. At Chiefs, home to Baltimore. At Steelers, home to Vikings first 4 weeks.
Not great.
That's not a great start, but they do play Jacksonville. Again, it gets easier for them, but I will say that's the tricky part.
So you're saying you're going to bet them live?
There might be some really good betting much like 2018 where they started 0-3. There might be a lot of good betting opportunities for them against the spread in week 5 and later. To me, I'm going to trade the win total we do like. It has moved up. 7.5 over was even money. Now it's minus 115. If you're more into the variance, I think the playoff berth one is maybe better. But
the one thing that I'll say about Deshaun Watson loses DeAndre Hopkins, and DeAndre Hopkins is fantastic. But now he has 3 guys who are ostensibly all going to be capable of stretching the field. And one of the things that he has consistently done well, which is an unstable metric, but he launches the deep ball down there with reckless abandon. He's willing to do it. He's been good at it. It's not like he's Josh Allen out here airmailing guys by 25 feet when he throws the ball downfield. So, there's something to the whole, you're losing DeAndre Hopkins, but you're giving Deshaun Watson you're saying, look, this is what we're going to do. We're going to attack. Go get it. And if there's one guy that I feel confident in after Patrick Mahomes being able to go do that, it is Deshaun Watson. So I like that.
Evan, which team do you like more than the market?
Oh, God.
It's Eric Eager. I'll let you guess.
Besides Buffalo.
This is a perfect transition. This is a perfect transition.
We all know. And
the elephant in the room, you guys have been delaying it.
Just get into it. Just
talk to me because I wrote an article the other day about Sean McDermott and how he deserved his contract extension. Like, there's a lot to like about Buffalo, but please
veiled hatred, by the way, in Josh Allen. Hatred is the wrong word. The praise for Sean McDermott overcoming Josh Allen in that article was...
Look, they built an offense
for him. Was it just for Evan?
They built an offense for him to fail less. I think was my exact phrase.
Because, I posted in our little DM thread where I just get hammered by Hermsmeyer and George and Moo and Kevin Cole all the time for my Josh Allen love. I posted that it's like 20-1 for Sean McDermott to win Coach of the Year, which that's like a pretty legit bet. And I was like, hey, this is your guys out, on the Josh Allen MVP thing. This is the way that you guys hedge. And no one jumped on it. Moo said, what did Moo say? He was like,
said if they were to win a division despite Josh Allen, he'd be more deserving than most.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the Bills at 8.5 with a super soft schedule, with extreme continuity throughout the coaching staff, in terms of both defensive and offensive personnel. with pulling out Duke Williams, Robert Foster, Isaiah McKenzie, and inserting freaking Stephon Diggs. Ian, back me up on this. Is there a more analytical way to roster construct than being like, hey, we had the worst deep ball passer in the league last year. Let's go get the best deep ball receiver in the league and put him on our team. And that's what they did. So I think that you guys at PFF should show a little bit more respect for the way that the Bills are building their team, because they're building it analytically.
So
that's the definition of analytics.
That's what we've said, though. Like, my thing, there's two different discussions here. The discussion is, would you, out of your own free will, draft Josh Allen? And I think the answer is no. The second question, which is again, it's sort of like the same thing with Lamar Jackson. Would you take Lamar Jackson? Yes, of course you would now. But back in the day, when that was a question, the answer is maybe not over a more traditional passer. But if I had him, this is how I'd build my offense. If I had Josh Allen and I knew that he struggled in certain things, this is absolutely how I would do it. Because if you watch 2017 Stephon Diggs with Case Keenum at quarterback, I don't know how many corner routes he's wide the fuck open and Case Keenum can hit him. And I think that's
one particular corner route comes to mind.
Yeah, exactly. And Cole Beasley provides something in that short passing game. I think Dawson Knox is a decent tight end, and I think the running backs, Zach Moss is a very good addition for them, and they do a decent job on the O-line. Cody Ford is really their only whiff there, and they don't really have to play him this year. So, like I said, conditional on having Josh Allen, they've done a great job.
Let's go back to what made Josh Allen this big joke to begin with. And that was his rookie 2017 season. And I'm going to read the top Bills receivers from that squad and targets. We had LaShawn McCoy, Charles Clay, Zay Jones, Deontay Thompson, Jordan Matthews, Nick O'Leary, Kelvin Benjamin, Andre Holmes. What happens in 2018? Not only do they just throw a ton of resources at the offensive line free agency to fix that garbage unit as well, that did perform well afterwards. You got Smokey Brown, you got Cole Beasley. What happened with Josh Allen? Plus 6% in completion rate, plus 1.2 in touchdown rate, minus 1.8 interception rate, plus 1.3 additional adjusted yards per attempt.
Go off.
And what's the problem still? Yeah, one of the league's, if not the worst deep ball passer, yet the guy continues to attempt to do it. And we just added the single best receiver last year in receiving yards on deep passes. So, say what you will about Josh Allen. The guy runs around like, he's a chicken with his head cut off sometimes. He's throwing the ball downfield in double coverage. He makes the defense guard every square inch of that field, for better or for worse. And now we have anyone's idea
could fumble it
of
anywhere.
An alpha wide receiver. So look, the guy took that huge step forward last year when they improved the squad. They've improved it again. And if you look at the overall teams in the AFC, the Steelers and Bills just stick out to me as maybe the most complete teams if everything stays their way. So yeah, it's a little bit unorthodox the way he gets it done, but I think we have plenty of reason to believe that the best of Josh Allen is still to come.
So let me ask you this. You said he improved last year, but I would make the argument that if you added all those pieces, he shouldn't be his PFF grade was basically the same. He still was the most inaccurate quarterback in the NFL. Last I checked, John Brown's whole thing is getting open deep. My worry would be, you want to see improvement, and the improvement in completion percentage was basically throwing shorter passes. It wasn't necessarily, he's actually getting more accurate. And the big question that I have, which I think is going to be really interesting, is why they play the fucking games, is, to your point, Evan, does getting a guy who's going to be wide open 25 yards downfield help a guy who can't throw it in the ocean? Right,
because there's the issue of drafting.
It does.
The question,
yes,
it comes back to
because you have to think.
Is this what you learn at your boxing classes?
And John Brown, who ran 4.34 coming out of Pittsburgh State. Stephon Diggs, who actually didn't run that fast coming out of Maryland, but we know that he is an incredible deep ball receiver.
Great route runner.
Think of them as Frisbee catchers. Oh. And these are guys who are going to pull in inaccurate passes.
Now, the ball's got to be in bounds for it to count.
And elevate the efficiency of their quarterback. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah,
I want to read you off the schedule for the Bills until their Week 11 bye.
Please.
Because you guys are going to be shaking in your boots for 10 weeks. This is going to be a brutal year for you guys.
I'm wearing sandals.
For the Josh Allen deniers, this is going to be a brutal year for you guys. Let's go. Week 1, at home against the Jets. Just
Look,
lost.
they
CJ
were
Mosley
negative
and
point
Jamal
differential
Adams.
against the Jets last year. And
Week
Josh Allen
2
played
against
like
the
half that
Dolphins,
last game.
smash. Week 3 against the Rams at home in Buffalo. The Rams lost Wade Phillips, a difference-making defensive coordinator, a ton of talent, Corey Littleton, Dante Fowler. The list goes on.
Weddle, Roby
Week
Coleman.
5, or Week 4, the freaking Raiders. Week 6.
You think Josh Allen's going to survive Vegas? There's no way.
We won't be playing Josh Allen in Week 6. Finally, we'll pause it. Then they play the Chiefs in a shootout. Then they get the Jets again. They get the Patriots. That's a little imposing. Seahawks defense is not imposing. And then the Cardinals. And this is going to be a rough 10 weeks.
Sorry?
I've been saying my prayers for you guys every night.
That looks
Look,
like
I don't know what you guys are
Long year
talking
for the
about.
Josh Allen
The
deniers.
Seahawks are going to acquire Earl Thomas. That's going to be the best big nickel in the history of the league. The Cardinals just got Buda Baker, the biggest contract among safeties. They got Isaiah Simmons in the middle of the field. Those guys are rangy enough to knock down even Josh Allen's passes. I agree, though, that it's a two-pronged discussion, and it's going to be really fascinating if the Bills are smart enough to deal with this. Because I do agree. If you add up all the talent, they should be good regardless of whether Allen is good. Like fundamentally, if he can't throw the ball in the ocean, I still think they'll move the ball and they'll be fine and they'll win some of these games, that you're talking about.
especially
Who
because
do
he
you think
can
wins
run.
the AFC East, though? I
I still think
Pats.
it's New England.
Yeah.
Well, so
Yeah.
my point was going to be, and Evan, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Cam Newton is a better quarterback than Josh Allen.
Yes.
Okay. Bill Belichick is still Bill Belichick. Patriots are still the Patriots.
Yep.
You think the Bills are going to win the division?
I think it's close. I'm a huge, pro Patriots guy, and that has paid off handsomely for many, many years.
I can tell.
But I think I would give the Bills a small edge this year. But I think that if you look at the rest of the division with the Jets and the Dolphins, like both of these teams, the Bills and the Patriots, are going to win a ton of games. Mm-hmm. So, and they both have soft schedules outside of the division as well. So, I like them both. I actually like the over under on the Patriots at DraftKings Sportsbook is 8.5. So I would actually over on the Patriots, and I would also, and the Bills are also at 8.5. I would bet the over on both of those.
I saw 9.5 somewhere.
Yeah, at BetOnline it's 8, it's 9. Under is plus 100 for the Bills. Over is minus 130. So maybe in that particular spot, it's been bet up.
What I think is interesting about both these guys, and looking at the league as a whole, which I think is fascinating, is how many guys that are now widely accepted to be the top of the top in terms of quarterbacks. Their athleticism and their ability to create with their legs, whether it's to pass or to run, is like a huge part of their game. I mean, even for Patrick Mahomes, it certainly is a huge part of his game. And both these guys, Cam Newton, obviously there's questions about his health and whatever, but both these guys provide a ton of value on the ground. And as in the fantasy space and in the analytics space, we extol the virtue of running with a quarterback, particularly on designed runs. Look at Lamar Jackson, what the Ravens were able to do. And in terms of acquiring fantasy points, rushing yards matter. But it always seems to be like there's this kind of three-pronged, how do you look at the NFL? Are you a fantasy guy? Are you a nerd? Or are you a football guy, purist who, watches the film? And I personally believe that all three of you are all three of those guys in one. Do we think we're making progress in terms of bringing everyone into the same space and analyzing football just more intelligently overall?
I think so. I'm pretty naive on some of the fantasy stuff, but I think you guys did a good job of sort of telling me maybe why I'm off a little bit on some of those things. And I personally think that anybody that's going to be a good fantasy analyst is a good football analyst to begin with. You can't really have blind spots in understanding the game of football without and then be a good fantasy analyst. At least not somebody who's like, the algorithmic stuff is sort of like it's gone now, right? Like you have to kind of know the game even among that because the markets are so sharp now. So I think it has to take a blend of those things.
Yeah, I think the idea you can be an analytics guy versus a tape guy, like it's just laziness. To have all that information at your disposal and to choose to ignore it, like in any other field, we just call that idiotic. And I think it's the same thing with football. Look, all the analytics are trying to do is quantify what we see on tape in the first place. When you see an analytic that doesn't do that, guess what? It's a bad analytic, and you're not going to be able to know that if you don't know what's going on with the film, going on with the game. I mean, it all goes together. It's all information, and the fact that anyone would ignore it. I mean, I don't. If you don't know fantasy football as much, that's more like you're just, you're not paying as much attention to that thing. But to me, like the analytics versus film debate should be over because you need to know both of them in order to be a good analyst.
I think it generally is over. I still think though that there is a misnomer that, like, the grades and all that PFF puts out, that like people don't understand, like that's derived from the tape. I mean, that right? And people some people don't get that. And that's strange to me. It just speaks to the fact that maybe they're not looking deep enough into where these numbers actually come from. They're all derived from the tape. And so, I mean, no one watches more tape than PFF. And I also think that PFF and, analytics, websites, they almost go hand in hand with fantasy football analysis. Mm-hmm. And that's why we get along so well, even though we, argue over guys. Well, I mean, I have to say this. I definitely, and I like to talk about my biases and not hide them. There's no, like, Josh Allen has been a really good fantasy quarterback. Mm-hmm. Okay. During his rookie year in 2018, over the final 6 weeks of that season, he was the number 1 overall fantasy quarterback. Last year, he was the number 6 overall fantasy quarterback. I'm a fantasy analyst. That's going to, create some level of bias in the way that
you're going to have warm fuzzies about the guy.
Yes, and especially because I rostered the shit out of him, played with PFS, and he's like literally made me money, But I also do think that I can step outside of that and be like, there are glaring weaknesses that Josh Allen has. But again, I think the Bills have done a good job of realizing his weaknesses, realizing his strengths, and catered their roster building to that.
And you're making a bet, which I don't hate, that the world that we're currently in, which is fantasy, gambling, and regular football, that narratives come from fantasy football and change the complexion of the MVP race, right? Like when you bet a guy to win the MVP at 100-1, even though I think I disagree, I don't think he has that good of odds. What you're saying is, if the Bills are really good at real football and Josh Allen continues to win people money at fantasy football, the things are going to bubble up and people are going to talk. And that does influence things. I mean, you look at 2018, Drew Brees was the MVP of the league for the whole season. I mean, he was minus money basically all the way until week 12 or 13.
Yeah, until he shit the bed against the Cowboys.
Until he shit on national television.
Yep.
And Patrick Mahomes on national television wasn't even winning games. The Chiefs finished that season like 5-3 or 4-3, but he was out there against Seattle. They lost, and he was out there just making the most impressive plays.
That game was awesome.
When people see Josh Allen,
dude, I listened to that on the radio actually, and I had money on the over.
So did we.
Dude, I was going fucking nuts in my car.
So how Pete Carroll managed to hit the over? It was like 55 in that game. How Pete Carroll managed to hit the over while running the football on first and second down the entire time was something, a stroke of – it's how bad the Chiefs defense was that year. But when we see Josh Allen jumping over Anthony Barr, when we see Josh Allen rushing for a number of touchdowns, like we're all – the sort of real football efficiency stuff – kind of the fact that he averages under 7 yards per pass attempt kind of goes by the wayside.
You could even say that about Todd Gurley a couple years ago. Like, and it's a great point because, we're also, we're all analysts, but we're also in the creating content space. And we talk about this all the time, which is like fantasy football is what consumers, the vast majority of consumers, want to consume football for, right? Like to be better at managing their team, which makes sense because it's your fucking team. Like you're gonna
Who was the highest scoring fantasy player last year?
McCaffrey.
Who is the highest scoring fantasy quarterback?
Lamar
by a country mile, really, right? And if you look at PFF WAR, he's not the most valuable player. I mean, that offensive line generated a ton of WAR. The defense generated a ton of WAR. Like there wasn't a ton on the table for him to gather. Russell Wilson was the MVP last season because there was more wins that he had to gobble up because everybody around him was letting him down. And we don't care because why? Because Seattle's not putting up the tons of yards and the tons of touchdowns.
But the point is that people that watch, their sports, they say they watch SportsCenter, right? SportsCenter would be stupid not to cover things from more of a fantasy and a betting angle. Yeah. They would be. And so there's just going to be, the narrative that's out there is going to be focused as, more and more on what people are interested in, and that's fantasy football.
Let's finish this with what George likes, what team George likes above the betting market, because we haven't gotten to you yet.
Well, I said a couple. So I really like the Redskins.
The football team.
Sorry.
You're rooting for the football team.
This is going to be worse, honestly, than San Diego and Los Angeles, which I still mess up.
Well, that's only
like
because the Chargers
Raiders
haven't
down.
been relevant since they moved to Los Angeles.
Yes.
Like we haven't had to talk about them because.
And in fairness to the Raiders, no one ever says Oakland.
True.
It was always the Raiders.
And they were the LA Raiders for a long time too, so everybody's used to kind of being like the.
So I'm actually way lower on the Redskins, but the football team, I'm very high on the football team.
Their colors, by the way, looking good.
Yes. I mean, I love Terry McLaurin. I think Dwayne Haskins underrated. And here's another thing. They were a disaster culturally last year. You know what brings people together? Strong leadership. And you're telling me
adversity.
Exactly. You're telling me Ron Rivera's illness, and I pray to God he gets healthy, and is able to coach. Those motherfuckers are going to rally around that guy like we've never seen. And also, you're talking about rookies that can actually contribute. Chase Young's going to contribute because that guy's a man-child. So that would be one. I think maybe the one that I feel best about. But I also like the Jaguars and the Lions, of course.
Little 2012 Colts vibes.
Yes.
When Pagano was going through that.
Yes.
The one that I'm going to finish with, I like Rams under 8.5. I think that's a cinch for the reason that Evan said. When you look at the defense is generally speaking, the coordinator is the most important.
Yeah.
And the second most important thing is continuity in the back seven. They lose Weddle. They lose Roby Coleman. Ramsey's kind of like up and down. And Corey Littleton as a linebacker, like they'll generate some pressure, but I don't think they'll be able to compete on the back end against an improving Arizona offense, Seattle, San Francisco. 8.5 just seems to me, I don't get it. Let
me ask you this, Evan. Are you in or out, or are you closer to being in or out on Sean McVay?
I don't know.
Is this the year? Is this the year though? This is the year, right?
What he gets. I mean, I feel like he got exposed a little bit last year. I mean, I would say that he definitely got exposed, and he had to make adjustments late in the season. And I don't know if they worked or not. I don't know. Why did they get rid of Wade Phillips? I don't understand that.
They got rid of John Fossil.
The way that they
built
their roster too, and I think that McVay has a big hand in this, is like so top heavy. A bunch of scrubs after that. I mean, I'm worried about their roster talent as well.
How do you have that offensive line and only add a 7th-round pick the entire offseason? Like, what are we wasting Cam Akers and like Van Jefferson? Nothing even against those guys, but like, look at that offense, and it's the offensive line.
Yeah, why did they use all their early picks on skill position players when that wasn't even their weakness, and they devoted to their defense and here's the other thing. Offensive line.
Here's the other thing about that team is usually we talk about NFL teams not being able to like see past why they succeeded and like figure out the real, here's where you really need to build a team. But the Rams actually had it like right in their face, right? They had the most continuity among their offensive linemen, and it was huge for them because they would be able to, bootleg out Jared Goff. He'd sit there for 4 seconds, and the deep crosser with Robert Woods or Cooper Kupp would be open, right? And he'd hit it. And now they don't have that because they couldn't pass block anybody. And you look at Jared Goff and you go, man, like there's no way he's making this throw now. He's not adjusting. It's all Sean McVay before the snap. And what worries me is that there hasn't been an adjustment to say, let's get rid of the ball quickly. Like they run a similar offense to what the Niners are doing over there. The difference is Jimmy Garoppolo has one of the quickest time to throws in the NFL.
He kind of reminds me and this is kind of the go back machine, but like a Byron Leftwich, Randall Cunningham release too.
Huh.
Like the quick passing game requires a quarterback to have more of like a Jeff George type of.
Yeah.
But he's kind of a long release guy. So I understand why they're more like, and granted, last season they had some success against the Niners. They had some success against Arizona late. I don't think you can sustain offense when your only go-to is a bootleg pass to the quarterback's best friend in Tyler Higbee. Like they have to,
Your boy.
like on a third down and long, the guy's got to be able to sit in the shotgun and protect with 5 and hit a pass. And I think Robert Woods is one of the best all-around wide receivers in football after the top 5 or 6 guys. And I do like Higbee. I think Gerald Everett's got talent. And Kupp's okay. Kupp's like kind of a 3. But the quarterback to me is just in addition to the defense and losing the best special teams coach in the NFL, to me there's just too much for the Rams to have success this year.
Okay, so are you in or out on McVay? Where do you think you'll be after this year?
You
just said you're going to go under.
He showed up he did not show up in the top bunch in our play caller rankings. I think for the next few years he's going to be considered kind of an average coach. I don't think he's going to lose his job, but I think he's going to be kind of an afterthought for a while.
Okay.
Real quick, what if, because there's no fans, Sean McVay just starts yelling stuff to Goff up until there's 1 second left in the play clock? Because normally it cuts off at 15 in the helmet. Technically, he could be yelling up.
But they're pumping in fan noise.
Okay, they better.
That's maybe the whole reason. Okay, let's end on this. We decided last night at dinner that we need to talk about fast food restaurants because there are some aficionados here. And so we're gonna do top 5. I think we should do top 3 because that narrows it down a little bit. Let's just go around the horn with our third guest first. Ian, kick us off.
My number 3 is my favorite road trip food. McDonald's, a classic, but I want it. Each and every road trip, I'm having it. And also, real quick, these need to have a drive-through.
Yes.
That's the big clarifier.
Me?
Evan.
Evan.
God, I love Ian because I agree with him on everything from his umbrella takes to his McDonald's takes. Have you ever heard his umbrella take, by the way?
No.
Biggest sign of weakness you can ever show.
Is using an umbrella.
Imagine using a perfectly good hand to hold something that might save a couple
Oh,
drops
don't
of
take my
water.
line. Don't take my line. I was going to say McDonald's, but is Chipotle fast
No,
food?
we're not doing fast cash.
No drive-through.
I think Chick-fil-A is overrated.
Ooh.
Burger King can be okay. I mean,
Just
I've
go
been
with
really,
McDonald's. If McDonald's is your number 3, then
all
go
right,
with
but I mean,
McDonald's.
throw out some other fast food outlets.
I'll give you my third here.
Yeah.
Which is mostly a southern place, but it was in Nebraska when I was there. Backyard Burger is my third favorite place.
Now, the beautiful thing about Eric doing this is he's going to say 3 places that I've never fucking heard of. So I have no way to verify if Backyard Burger has a drive-thru or not. But
It does.
Yo, we have to give a shout out to Popeyes because sometimes Popeyes hits the fucking spot.
Do they have a drive-thru?
Yeah.
Yeah,
They do.
Yeah, they
Okay.
do.
So
Yep.
is Popeyes your number 3? Jesus Christ. Okay, my number 3 is Sonic.
Yuck. Okay, my number 2.
God damn.
You don't like Sonic?
It's okay. It's not top 3 though.
Central Ohio's own Raising Cane's.
Okay, hold on. Actually,
some of the best chicken you'll find.
Hold on. You hate my number 3. I'll give you what my number 4 was.
Okay.
See if you hate that more. Taco Bell.
See,
Awful. Absolutely awful.
I've eaten
Taco
at Sonic,
Bell's fine.
So I've eaten at Sonic
No,
one
it's not.
time.
It's horrible. It's
I've
horrible.
eaten at Sonic one time. I've eaten at Taco Bell maybe 5 times in the past 10 years.
okay.
Taco Bell, that's a perfect ratio because Taco Bell is the place that you see every 2 years, and then you're like, oh, that could be good. And then you eat it, and it's awful, and you don't eat it for another 2 years. And go back in 2 more years, and you try it again, and it's still awful.
I can't remember what it tastes like, to be honest with you. And when I went to Sonic, I didn't get any of the food. I got a milkshake.
So bad. Just brutal.
So I thought it was good. Okay, number 2.
Raising Cane's. Get that cane sauce. Get that Texas bread.
Yeah.
Ooh, and I will say, and this is like super fast foody, but I will go to Raising Cane's to get the chicken and then go to KFC to get their macaroni and cheese and mashed potatoes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's baller.
Go for it, Evan.
White Castle at 2 a.m.
Okay.
It just goes right through you. It's gone by the next day. Let's put it that
Fuck
way.
with that.
True.
I was going to pick Canes. I'm going to go with – I think Chick-fil-A is in the same equivalence class, so I'm going to go Chick-fil-A for 2.
Okay. I think Chick-fil-A is overrated. I'm with Evan. Can I count Wingstop?
See, I don't know what Wingstop is, so.
It's tasty.
Wingstop is good.
We all went chicken with 2 except for Evan.
So Wingstop, like, not only are the wings good, you know, the lemon pepper is obviously fantastic, but I also think the fries are really damn good too.
Yeah.
So
We don't have to adjust for price.
true. All right. Number 1 spot, Ian.
Easy Steak and Shake, the GOAT.
Wow.
Ooh, that's a great call. Great call, as usual, Ian Hartitz.
Wow.
Great call.
How many times do you think I've eaten at a Steak and Shake?
0.
I put the over-under at 2.5.
0.
0.5.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
under.
Missing out.
Go ahead, Evan.
I'm out of places. I don't know anything else.
You don't have a number 1 place?
I guess
Yeah,
it's
it
White
was
Castle.
McDonald's. I tried McDonald's. I tried
Okay,
Chipotle.
Jesus.
I tried White Castle at 2 a.m.
Evan's really trying to give off the healthy vibe now.
All right.
I've been trying to be healthy, man.
Here's
I
mine.
fat during the pandemic.
I will say this. I was going to comment on this after the fact, but I'll just say it on, this will make the air. We won't edit this out. You're looking really good. I was not sarcastic. Usually that's very sarcastic. You are looking good. The boxing's been paying off.
5 Guys is my first one.
I've been working out like 5 days a week, man.
That's
Been awesome.
solid.
Yeah.
Been great. Yep.
Five Guys is great. I wish it was half the price it is, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and weighed half as much.
Yeah.
Because the issue is if you eat 5 Guys, it's a day ender. Like you're not getting anything done.
I have been to Five Guys. My favorite thing about Five Guys was that they'd like pack it into a bag and like within 10 seconds, if you didn't immediately open it, and it was like you got a nice grease stain on one half of the bag. My number 1 is In-N-Out, and it's the undisputed champ. It's really the only one of these top 3 that I would actually, legitimately go to and feel good about it.
In-N-Out's fine. Yeah, it's good.
People that lose their damn mind over it, I think, can take a step back, but it's good.
Don't you think? So the people that lose their mind about it, aren't they really just wishing that they were a part of like California culture? Isn't that it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but people who are part of California culture also lose their mind over it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like you don't have any. You're not over projecting here. You and Austin are both like die in the wool, by In-N-Out people, and you still like go gaga over it.
I don't go gaga over it though. Like, if I were in LA, if I were living in LA, I would go to In-N-Out once a month.
Okay.
But living in
See, I go to like Five Guys like once every like 6 months. That's the thing.
Living in Cincinnati though, I have not gone to a fast food place ever.
Well, because Skyline Chili is
Skyline Chili didn't make any of the lists.
No.
It's bullshit.
Nor should it.
Nor should it. In college
You
though,
could not maintain those quads going in and out all the time either.
very true. They're right here, baby. First trip to Cincinnati. All right. That was it. Evan Silva, establishtheRun.com. If you are not a part of the Establish the Run community, you need to be. Great content, despite what Evan puts out. The other stuff is good too. Ian Hartitz of PFF, obviously the PFF fantasy stuff, taking a huge step in the right direction thanks to your leadership. It's been fantastic. And then Eric, blossoming young junior fantasy analyst.
Look, guys, I got to contribute a little bit here. I know where the money is. Got to shake my ass a little bit here.
Jesus Christ, we'll end on that. All right, big thanks to Evan Silva and Ian driving all the way out here. What are your thoughts of Cincinnati so far?
I like it. I've always maintained it's a little more Kentucky than Ohio, but it's a little fun downtown area. Anytime you got multiple professional sports teams, hard to be too bad of a city.
Ooh, that's a nice take. We haven't taken them to Gallup Park yet, though, or Skyline Chili.
I've been to neither, allegedly. So, yeah, I mean, I agree with you that it's a lot more northern Kentucky than it is Ohio for sure.
Yeah, it's basically Kentucky. All right, that is our show. We'll actually have another one tomorrow-ish afternoon.
We're recording early tomorrow.
Yeah, we're recording early tomorrow. So we'll have Kevin Cole on that. It'll be a lot of fun. And I hope you guys are staying safe out there. Thanks for tuning in. Peace out.
Thanks for watching the PFF YouTube channel. And if you want to subscribe, all you have to do is push the button. Don't forget everything you get. A little fantasy, push the button. A little green line for the gambling aspects of the game, push the button. College football, push the button. The YouTube channel from PFF.